Thanks so much. Thank you. Welcome to have a seat and welcome to Tennessee. That was incredibly nice, but as the folks in this room know better than anyone else, I certainly didn't come close to doing any of that by myself. With me in this room are several Tennessee state legislators. If you would please stand up and let us all recognize you as well, we would be grateful. That group does a great job. Welcome to Nashville, where the person waiting on you is more than likely to have a hit song in the next 24 months, if they haven't already. You know, you learn where you stand in Nashville really starkly sometimes. It's easy to think as governor you're kind of a big deal. You get nice introductions when you walk up somewhere, and then every now and then people remind you who you really are. Two or 3 years ago, I was actually flying out west. We're having a Republican Governors Association meeting out west, and I got on a Southwest airline flight. You know how Southwest works. They kind of board you by groups of rows, and they do give you a little break if you're the governor, and they let you get on sort of near the front. And I get on, and there's a woman already sitting there, and she's in her seat, and I sit down, and her eyes get huge. She goes, I can't believe that the governor is flying on my airplane. And I said, yes, ma'am. She said, I can't believe you're flying on the airplane, and you're going to be sitting here next to me for 3.5 hours. I went, uh-oh, you know, because I could tell she had more than one agenda. And so we talked for a little while, and then all of a sudden I hear that sound that cell phones make when they're taking a picture, everywhere. And I kind of look up, and down the aisle, if you're a country music fan, the group Little Big Town, all 4 lead singers are walking down the aisle, and everybody's taking their picture and going crazy. And this woman, she's grabbing her phone and taking her picture. You know, before she'd been wanting to have a selfie with the governor, but that was, you know, she's taking their picture, and all of a sudden she elbows me and goes, "You're not such a big deal anymore." So, welcome to Nashville, where you know your place at all times. Hey, I am thrilled to have a chance to be here and to speak. I obviously know very well of Alec's work. A lot of things that we've had a chance to do over the last 7 years in Tennessee are ideas that members learned when they went to various meetings and came back and said, I have a thought. I can identify, Alec said, I'm the chair of this year, the Republican Governors Association. And one of the things I've learned is this, that there are very, very few brand new ideas under the sun. These meetings are probably a little bit like the governor's meetings are. You go and you spend the first 20 minutes or the first third of the meeting, whatever it is, bragging about, well, we did this. We just got ranked number 1 in this. We just cut this. We just did this. And then you spend the rest of the time trying to figure out, well, do they have any good ideas that we can steal? And we have been the beneficiary of several ideas that have been proposed by some members that are with us today, of ideas that came out of that. So for that, I'm really grateful. You know, this is a really interesting time for state governments. The conversation in Washington, particularly around the tax plan, I think is going to throw new light on what is happening in various state capitals. I personally am a huge fan of the move to no longer let you deduct state and local taxes. Those clapping are from low tax states. Because here's the thing. I was actually speaking to a group in New York a couple weeks ago, and they were all talking about how horrible the plan is. And so I stood up and I said, let me ask a question. There was a former Treasury Secretary and a lot of people that knew the tax code way better than I did. But I said, tell me how it's fair that one state can decide we want to do this and we want to offer this, but we're going to charge our people more, but then we're going to have everybody else subsidize it. I said, nothing could be more unfair than that. And I started reading about when that happened, when they first passed U.S. income tax. That's when they first started letting state and local taxes be deducted against your federal tax. And Justice Felix Frankfurter, who was on the Supreme Court at the time, said, I think it's a good idea because states are supposed to be the laboratories of democracy, and this will let them go do experimentation. And so I thought all these years later, well, we're not supposed to be laboratories with somebody else paying the bill. We're supposed to be laboratories and saying, we'll let our citizens decide, is that how you want to do it? And I think you've seen more differentiation from states recently than ever, and I think you will continue to. And I think the pressure will come when some states, if you have a 12% income tax rate, by the way, ours is 0 here if anybody's looking to move. But if you have a 12% income tax rate and you're thinking, well, I get to deduct that, so it's really just 6 or 6.5. It's not such a big deal. All of a sudden, if you're paying the full 12, you start thinking differently about it. And I think you're going to see a lot of very different state capitals. Capitals are going to have to say, well, what do we do about the cost and size of government? Tennessee, we've worked really hard to do two things. We've worked to grow our economy, to be the place that companies chose, and this legislature has done some things. We did tort reform our very, very first year, and it made a tremendous difference. We reformed our workers' comp. We reformed the process for workers' comp, and today, if you're a business in Tennessee, you pay about almost 30% less in workers' comp charges than you did when we started this. We worked hard to lower taxes, so the business tax, the franchise and excise tax, we lowered for manufacturers just this past year because, those manufacturing jobs, for every one we create, they bring another 6 or 7 along with them. So we've worked hard to create that environment and also to say, we value you here. I spend about a third of my time going out and recruiting businesses. I'm just going to a meeting after this, met with somebody for dinner last night, did something the day before as well. And the message that I always convey to them, and this is the message we need to convey in this whole country, is we get it. We understand jobs get created when people put capital at risk. That government doesn't ever create a job. I love it when you brag on Tennessee's growth rate, but I didn't create one job. We actually we have fewer state government jobs than we came, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But jobs get created when people put capital at risk. And we've created that environment in Tennessee where we've told that. Because of that, we've way outgrown not just the national economy, but our own budget projections. So we've ended up with that great problem of we've brought in more revenue than we were projecting. And so we're not sitting scrambling at the end of the year saying, what are we going to do? We have the opposite problem of saying, all right, how can we reinvest this money or cut taxes further? So that's the first thing we've done. The second thing we've done is we've been really serious about having government work right. I think one message that conservatives need to convey is this. We don't think, this is my opinion, we don't think government is bad. We just think it's bad when it's out of control. And I compare it all the time to fire. We're seeing what's happening with wildfires out in California now. That's what happens when it's out of control. Burns forests, burns homes, cascades over freeways and all the other horror sights that you're seeing on the news. That's fire out of control. Fire under control warms our houses and cooks our foods and fuels our vehicles. That's how I look at government. Government under control is worthy, and I look at us as having a very sacred mission to provide services for folks. But we also have to remember that we're a monopoly. And if somebody wants a driver's license, we're the only people that they can get it from. If somebody wants a new road built, it's going to be us. If you have a family member who's involved in the adoption process, it's going to be us. If you have a family member who's struggling with mental health issues, more than likely somebody's going to be involved. So we realize that it's our sacred obligation to provide that great service. We just want to do it in an effective manner. One of the things I learned when I became governor is this. I'd been mayor for 7 years, but prior to that I'd been in business. And I learned this. People always say, we want you to run government like a business until you do. And then they say, well, not like that. That's the part of government that I like. But we've been very purposeful about making certain that we're not only making certain government's not out of control, but we're deploying our assets in the right places. So we've actually shrunk, as I said, our state employees. We have about 10% fewer than we had when we came in. But that average employee is actually making about $10,000 more per year. I didn't like the model we had for government employment. It was this. Come work for the government. Here's the deal. We're going to pay you fairly poorly, but we're going to give you great long-term benefits, and it's going to be impossible to get fired. That's not a very good way to motivate anybody. So we changed things. We basically reformed and did away with our civil service system to make certain that who got promoted or who got hired is not just who had been breathing the longest, but actually who was the most qualified to provide great service for this monopoly that we've been trusted in running. And so we've worked incredibly hard to do that, and we see that turning up in customer service results time and again. We also have redeployed. Like I said, we've cut after this last budget, thanks to the legislature, in ongoing expenses, things we were spending money on that we're no longer. The total's about $600 million. We've redeployed a lot of that. We're actually, and I know folks like us don't get a lot of credit for believing in public education, and I believe in charters and vouchers and everything else we can do to give opportunities, but I also know that the vast majority of our kids are going to be in public schools. And so we're spending $1.4 billion more on public education than we were before, because I honestly believe we have to give those folks a preparation to be ready for the workforce challenges of tomorrow. We've done that. We've put in some innovative programs like Tennessee Promise and Tennessee Reconnect so that people have access to higher education, because we want them to be able to compete. And as a result of that, we become even more attractive to those businesses about where they're going to locate. I've been, as I said, I was a mayor for 7 years, and I've been a governor now for 7 years, and I've got 1 more year to go. And I had somebody remind me that what it's like to be a governor in your last year, and they said there's an old Australian saying that works in your case. It is, rooster today, feather duster tomorrow. And so you realize that, and you realize that those things you've worked hard on, you want to make certain that those things don't go away. And here's my biggest fear. People say, well, what are you going to try to do in your last year? And I said, well, I want to make certain that people understand how we got where we are. And due to some of the folks you saw in this room and a lot of their peers, we've made some hard decisions. On education, when I came into office, the United States Chamber of Commerce had just given us an F for truth in advertising, for saying that 70% of our kids were proficient at grade level in education. But oh, by the way, those same kids, when they got to community college, 70% of them needed remedial work. So there was some disconnect. We had unemployment that was 9.5%, a full 1.5 above the national average. Today, we're at 3%, the lowest in the state's history. Every county we have is below 5.5%, all 95 of our counties. Of the new jobs we've added this year, 45% of them have been in our rural areas that in our state, like your state, have struggled. In our budget, if you were involved in state government, then you know the stimulus plan of the Obama era of 08 put a lot of money out there supposedly for infrastructure plans. A lot of that went to state government to pay bills like Medicaid and education. All that money was coming out of our budget. We worked hard to do that. Today, Tennessee, depending on how you look at it, has the second or third lowest taxes as a percentage of income in the country. Thanks to the folks that stood up, we've done away with the estate and gift tax. We're on the way with in process, as you heard, of doing away with hall income tax. We've cut the tax on groceries a full point. And what else did we cut? Something else. Somebody help me. What did I forget? I'm sorry, the F&A tax on manufacturers. Despite that, we've been able to change, and our rainy day fund is at the highest amount in state's history. And last year, for the first time in recorded history, we didn't borrow one new dollar. Not only did we pay down our debt, but we didn't borrow one new one. And then this year became the second year in recorded history. I was meeting with the credit rating agencies in New York about a month ago, and forever we had AAA ratings there's 3 of them, from Fitch's and from Moody's, and Standard & Poor's had never given us a AAA, which was kind of personally bugging me, and so we were working really hard. Earlier they'd given us a AAA rating, and so we're making the presentation, and the guy that's the lead analyst stopped me and said, well, what's going on in Tennessee? And it took all my southern restraint not to say, well, it took you a long time to notice. But we were able to tell him about the hard decisions that the folks that stood up and their peers made to run government in a better way. As I get ready to walk off this stage, but like I said, a year from now, walk off from being governor, I take great pride in that we really do have a government that's focused on being as low tax and low debt, and yet as high service as we can be. I always say that our job is to provide the very best service at the very lowest cost, and we have been laser focused on that while increasing our people's opportunity to have access to great education, and working hard to make certain that no matter where you are, if you're a business around the world, that you know in Tennessee, the capital dollars you invest here will be highly respected, and we'll do everything we can to get you the very best return we can. So thank you. We love having you here in Tennessee. I'll make one last mention in case I didn't mention earlier. We don't have an income tax here, so we live off sales tax. So please go out and be generous tonight, and we would be very grateful. Thanks so much.